Good morning, Shy. Or good afternoon, whatever it is for you, I don't know. So good morning, Shy. Good morning, sweetie. Good morning, baby. Or good afternoon, whatever it is. It is time for another Michael Oher update. My family is absolutely right. They've been waiting for a couple of... And this little thing that you're looking at right here, this is my actual fireplace. Isn't it pretty? It's gorgeous. It's freezing here in Louisiana, but this is not from this morning. This is actually from, I think, 2 weeks ago, something like that. The plan was to film it, to loop it. I'm just crazy like that. I hate B-roll from other places. Sometimes I like to make my own. So this is what I'm going to be playing on the big TV, on the other big TV and all of that during the holidays, instead of that fake looking fireplace that you can just, grab from anywhere. This is my actual fireplace, and it's so pretty. I like to throw those it's like little packets in it to make the fire different colors. But anyway, good morning, Shaq. Good afternoon. And don't worry, I'm not going to put you to sleep with this fireplace, because I got a lot of things that I want you to actually see. Seeing is believing. I want you to see it with your own eyes. So much has happened with the Michael Oher case in the past couple of weeks. It's about 3 months into it, but the last couple of weeks have been crazy. The Tuohys are claiming that Michael Oher attempted to extort them for $15 million. In my opinion, it wasn't extortion. That is the wrong E word. It wasn't extortion. It was, he said he was going to expose you. It's not extortion if somebody says, if you don't give me what I think you owe me, I'm going to tell the world. Oh, I guess he was supposed to just go home, lick his wounds in private. Oh, how dare he get upset? How dare he get frustrated? How dare he threaten to tell everybody what he's feeling inside? That he feels like he was taken advantage of. That he feels like he's owed money. How dare he? We didn't tell him he could do that. Because remember, Michael Lewis said that Michael Oher had become accustomed to doing what people told him to do. So let's get started. S.J. Tuohy on Barstool Sports said, there is no way my family knew that Michael Oher was going to be Michael Oher. There's no way that my family knew that this guy could be the highest paid player on an NFL roster. There's no way we knew. You guys are giving us way more credit than we deserve. In chapter 2 of the book, The Blindside, there's a different narrative that is being told. Maybe S.J. Tuohy didn't read the book. Maybe he hasn't seen the movie. Maybe he doesn't understand what the prevailing narrative is about his own family. In the book, they waste no time. And I'm going to read you word for word what was said in the book. Before we go any further, it is important to explain exactly who Tom Leming is. Tom Leming, back in 1978, decided he would get in his car. We're not talking about flights. We're not talking about train rides. We're talking about getting in a car, gassing up, and getting on the road with a map. In 1978, he decided he would interview every notable high school football player in the country. Back in 78, nobody was doing that but Tom Leming. Over the years, he established himself as, in my opinion, the Michael Jordan of football scouting for high school. Just imagine Michael Jordan walking in your gym at your high school to see your son or nephew or brother. It isn't every day that Michael Jordan shows up at your school to see your kid. And S.J. Tuohy wants the world to believe that, oh no, my family had no idea that Michael Oher would become Michael Oher. You guys giving us way too much credit. We had no idea. If Michael Jordan showed up at your high school to see your child, your brother, your nephew, whatever, that would ring an alarm. You would know there is something special about this player. But SJ Tuohys said, oh no, we didn't know. You guys are giving us too much credit. We didn't know. We had no idea. Back to reading verbatim from chapter 2. Someone had sent Tom Lemming a tape, but then Tom Lemming received thousands of tapes from thousands of football coaches and parents who wanted their kids to make the various high school All-American teams he selected. He at least glanced at all of them, usually quickly. This tape was different. This tape he watched in wonder. He knew right away this boy was a special case. He lived and played in Memphis, Tennessee, and Memphis was always rich in raw high school football talent. So that wasn't it. The tape was grainy and you couldn't see very well, said Leming. But when he came off the line, it looked like one whole wall was moving. And it was just one player. You had to look at it twice to believe it. He was that big. And yet, he would get out and go chase down and catch these fast little linebackers. When I saw the tape, I guess I didn't really believe it. I saw how he moved, and I wondered how big he really was, because no one who is that big should be able to move that fast. It just wasn't possible. That is Tom Lemming, who came to Memphis, Tennessee, looking for Michael Oher. Okay, chapter 2 continues. Leming had plenty of experience discovering great players. Each year he drove 50 to 60,000 miles and met and grilled between 1,500 to 2,000 high school juniors. He got inside of their heads months before the college recruiters were allowed to shake their hands. For instance, no one outside of Newport News, Virginia, had ever heard of Michael Vick, future number 1 pick in the entire NFL draft and quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, before Leming stumbled upon him and wrote him up in his newsletter. But even in the case of Michael Vick, the people closest to him knew he had the talent. Michael Vick was no secret in Newport News, Virginia. Michael Oher was as good as invisible, even in Memphis, Tennessee. Leming asked around, and the local high school coaches either didn't know who he was or didn't think he was any good. He hadn't made so much as the 3rd string all-city team. He hadn't had his name or picture in any newspaper. An internet search for Oher yielded nothing on him. The only proof of his existence was this grainy videotape. This is the melodramatics of Michael Lewis. It continues. To make my list, they almost always have to have production, said Leming. By production, he meant honors and achievements, not mere potential. He, meaning Michael Oher, was different from just about every other kid I picked to be a high school All-American, in that he didn't have any. But if Michael Oher in the flesh was anything like Michael Oher on the videotape, Leming was afraid not to make an exception of him. He had his reputation to protect. Leming had his reputation to protect. Nothing was as embarrassing to him as leaving a kid off his list who 4 years later was a first-round NFL draft pick. And the last time he had even seen a player with this awesome array of physical gifts was back in 1993, when he went to the Sizzler Steakhouse in Sandusky, Ohio, and interviewed a high school junior who was working behind the counter named Orlando Pace. Michael Oher's athletic ability and his body The only thing you could compare it to was Orlando Pace, said Lemming. He kind of even looked like Orlando Pace. He wasn't as polished as Orlando, but Orlando wasn't Orlando in high school. Pace had gone from Lemming's All-American team to Ohio State, where he'd played left tackle and won the Outland Award given to the nation's finest offensive lineman. In 1997, he'd signed the largest rookie contract in NFL history to play left tackle at the St. Louis Rams, for the St. Louis Rams, And he was about to sign an even bigger one, 7 years, $52.8 million. Pace became and would remain the team's highest paid player, more highly paid than the star quarterback. And this is who the Michael Jordan of scouting is comparing Michael Oher to. But as J. Tuohys said, we had no idea. My family did not know. You guys are giving us way too much credit. This is before he's seen anything of Michael Oher. He's only seen a grainy videotape of him. And that was enough to put gas in the car to get to Memphis. And we'll get to what happened once he got there. It continues in the mid-1990s. ESPN began to publish an All-American team selected by Leming. USA Today published another one, also mainly selected by Leming. In 2000, the U.S. Army High School All-American Football Game was born and broadcast on national television. Leming selected the 80 players for the game: Reggie Bush, Vince Young, Adrian Peterson, Dwayne Jarrett, Chris Leak, Lindell White, Brady Quinn. The game became a turnstile for future Heisman Trophy candidates and the top NFL draft picks. And guess who asked Michael Oher if he wanted to be a part of that game? But as J. Tuohys said, my family had no idea. You're giving us way too much credit. Now do you see why I'm not buying what they're trying to sell? There's a whole book that details, if you believe this book, because some of it I don't believe, that details what happened. The very thing that August 14th, 2023, S.J. Tuohys tries to convince the viewers that didn't happen. Wasn't the movie based upon the book? Tom Lemming also publishes an annual prep report. So Tom Lemming is the authority. He knows what he's doing. And he sets out to Memphis to see this particular player called Michael Oher. Chapter 2 continues. After he'd seen Michael Oher's tape, Leming tried to reach the kid by phone. He found out that his surname was pronounced Oher, but that's about all he learned. He was accustomed to the social lives of the high school football stars, the handlers, the harems, the informal advisors, the coaches. The kids Leming sought to meet were not typically hard to find. This kid not only had no handlers, he didn't appear to exist outside of school. He had no home. He didn't even have a phone number, or so said the Briarcrest Christian School when Leming called looking for Michael Oher. They had been mystified by Lemming's interest in their student, but they were also polite and finally agreed to have someone drive Michael Oher over to the University of Memphis football facility for a face-to-face interview. I'll never forget when he walked into the room, says Leming. He looked like a house walking into a bigger house. He walked in the door and he could barely fit through the door. He wasn't just huge. He was huge in exactly the right way. There's a big blob, 300-pounder, and there's the solid kind, said Lemming. He was the solid kind. You also see big guys, tall guys who weigh a lot, but they have thin legs. They're fine in high school, but in college, they'll get pushed around. What happened next was the strangest encounter of Lemming's 27-year football scouting career. Michael Oher sat down at the table across from him and refused to speak. He shook my hand and then didn't say a word, said Leming. His hands, they were huge. Leming asked him the usual questions. What colleges are you interested in? What do you want to major in? Where do you think you'll be in 10 years? They were met with total silence, not knowing what else to do. Leming handed the kid his questionnaire. Michael Oher looked at it and put it to one side. Leming then handed him the ultimate prize, the form to play in the U.S. Army High School All-Star football game. Michael Oher looked at it, put it too to one side. You want to fill it out or not? Asked Leming finally. Oher just shrugged. In hopes of generating some kind of response, Leming asked what he assumed was a simple question. So you want to play in the Army game or not? It was equivalent to asking a 4-year-old if he'd like a lifetime supply of ice cream. But Michael Oher didn't say yes or no. He made some sound of total indifference, said Leming. First guy to ever say that, first and last. Now, I don't know if I really believe it happened that way. If we are to believe what Michael Lewis said, that Michael Oher is accustomed to doing what he is told, well, surely they told him, listen, we're going to drive you over to the University of Memphis. There's a guy that's waiting to meet you, Tom Lemming. He wants to ask you a few questions. So why, when Michael Oher arrives, he won't even answer his questions? That's why I have some doubt about whether or not it really happened that way. I didn't hold a grudge, said Leming. He wasn't rude to me, and I tried to go with the best players. I thought he could be the best offensive lineman to come out of the South in the last 5 years. He was an instant All-American. I saw him as a number 1 NFL draft choice, playing left tackle, but there was no way he'd invite Michael Oher to play in the U.S. Army All-American game. What never crossed Tom Lemming's mind was that the player he would rank the number 1 offensive lineman in the nation and perhaps the finest left tackle prospect since Orlando Pace hadn't the faintest idea who Leming was or why he was asking all these questions. For that matter, he didn't even think of himself as a football player, and he'd never played left tackle in his life. I don't know how much of all of this I believe, because I think there's a lot of artistic license taken with all of this.